I am Sarah, 34 years old, and my daughter just told me that another woman wears my favorite silk pajamas. Before I tell you how I sent my husband to jail and reclaimed my life, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far our community reaches. You know that specific kind of exhaustion you feel after a 12-hour shift at the hospital? It's not just in your feet, it settles deep in your bones. I'm a nurse practitioner, and that Friday had been brutal. The ER was overflowing, I had lost a patient in the ICU, and I had skipped lunch to cover for a colleague. By the time I pulled into my driveway at 6:30 p.m., all I wanted was a glass of cheap Merlot, a hot shower, and silence. But when you're a mother and a wife, silence is a luxury you can't afford. I sat in my car for a minute, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the house. My house. The one I had worked double shifts for 3 years to save the down payment for. It was a beautiful 2-story colonial in the suburbs, the kind of place that screams American dream. The porch light was on, and I could see the warm glow from the kitchen window. From the outside, it looked perfect. I took a deep breath, plastered on my mom is home and happy smile, and walked inside. The smell of garlic and boiling pasta water hit me. David, my husband, was in the kitchen. He was standing by the stove, scrolling through his phone with that intense focus people usually reserve for bomb defusal, not Instagram. "Hey, honey," I said, dropping my heavy bag on the counter. "Smells good." David didn't look up immediately. "Hey. Spaghetti night. Easy." David was a handsome man. He's a real estate agent, and he maintains that polished, salesman look even on a Friday night. Crisp polo shirt, hair perfectly gelled. He turned to me and offered a cheek for a kiss, his eyes still darting back to his screen. "Rough day?" he asked, finally sliding the phone into his pocket. "The worst," I sighed, washing my hands at the sink. Dr. Evans was on a rampage, and the coding system went down again. "I just want to eat and pass out." "Well, dinner is ready," he said, dumping a jar of store-bought sauce into the noodles. I looked over at the table. Lily, my sweet 5-year-old, was already seated. She had her coloring book open, scribbling furiously with a purple crayon. Her hair was a mess of tangles, David never brushed it properly, but she looked up at me with those big, innocent brown eyes that melted my heart every single time. "Hi, Mommy," she chirped. "Hi, Bug," I said, kissing the top of her head. I smelled something floral on her hair. Not her usual strawberry shampoo. It was heavier, musky. Like an adult perfume. I frowned slightly but dismissed it. Maybe she'd gotten into my vanity again. We sat down. The mood was normal. Or what I thought was normal back then. David poured himself a glass of wine but didn't offer me one. He was distracted, tapping his foot against the table leg. I started twirling my spaghetti, trying to push the stress of the hospital out of my mind. "So," David said, breaking the silence. "I might need to go into the city tomorrow. Show a condo to a potential buyer. Big commission if it lands." "On a Saturday?" I asked, taking a bite. "I thought we were going to the pumpkin patch with Lily." "Work is work, Sarah," he said, a hint of defensiveness in his tone. "The market doesn't wait for pumpkins. You of all people should know about working weekends." That stung. He knew I worked weekends to pay the mortgage because his commissions had been dry for 6 months. But I didn't want to fight. "Not tonight." "Okay," I said quietly. "We'll go next week." I reached for the Parmesan cheese shaker and sprinkled a generous amount over Lily's bowl. She loved cheese. Usually, she would clap her hands and yell, "More snow." But tonight, she stopped coloring. She looked at her bowl, then up at me, her face scrunched up in confusion. "Mommy," she said, her voice clear and loud in the quiet kitchen. "Vanessa says you shouldn't put that much cheese. She says it makes your tummy fat." I froze. The shaker hovered in midair. "Who?" I asked, thinking I misheard. Vanessa, Lily repeated. She picked up her fork and poked at a meatball. I looked at David. He had stopped chewing. His eyes were fixed on his plate, but I saw his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed hard. Who is Vanessa, Lily? I asked, my voice dropping an octave. Is she a new friend at school? Lily giggled. No, silly. She's the lady. What lady? The lady who comes when you go to work at night, Lily said matter-of-factly. She calls me her little princess. She told me to call you Sarah, because she's going to be Mommy V soon. The silence that followed was deafening. It wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum that sucked all the air out of the room. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked at David. His face had gone from his usual tan to a sickly, pasty white. His hand was trembling slightly as he held his wine glass. David? I said. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. He dropped his fork. It hit the porcelain plate with a violence that made me jump. Clang. Kids, David laughed, but it was a dry, hollow sound. A nervous tick. They have such wild imaginations, don't they? Probably watching too much YouTube. I ignored him. I turned my entire body toward my 5-year-old daughter. I needed to know. I needed to know right now. Lily, look at Mommy, I said gently. Does Vanessa come here? To our house? Lily nodded, her mouth full of pasta. She's pretty. She has long yellow hair. And what does she do here? I asked, feeling bile rise in my throat. She cooks pancakes. Lily beamed. And she watches movies with Daddy on the big couch. And she wears your sleeping clothes. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. My sleeping clothes? Yeah, Lily said, reaching for her water. The blue shiny ones. Because she forgot hers, Daddy said. She says they feel like water. My blue silk pajamas. I bought those pajamas for our 5th anniversary. They were Italian silk. Expensive. The kind of luxury I never splurged on for myself, but I wanted to feel beautiful for him. I kept them in the back of my drawer, wrapped in tissue paper. A stranger, a woman named Vanessa, was walking around my house, cooking in my kitchen, cuddling my daughter, and wearing my silk pajamas while I was at the hospital saving lives to pay for the roof over their heads. I looked at David. The fear in his eyes confirmed everything. He wasn't just cheating. He was replacing me. He was erasing me in my own home. For a solid 10 seconds, David and I just stared at each other across the centerpiece of fake hydrangeas. The air was thick, heavy with the truth that had just been spilled by a kindergartner. Then, David decided to go on the offensive. He stood up so abruptly his chair screeched against the hardwood floor. Okay, that is enough, he barked, pointing a finger at Lily. Lily, go to your room. Now. No dinner. No, I said, my voice cutting through his command like a scalpel. I didn't shout, but the intensity in my tone made Lily freeze. Lily, stay right there. Eat your dinner. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling like jelly, but my spine stiff with rage. David. We need to talk. In the living room. There's nothing to talk about. David threw his hands up, his face flushing red. She's 5, Sarah. She has an imaginary friend. Last week she told me there was a dragon in the garage. Are you going to go check for scales now too? A dragon doesn't have a name like Vanessa, I said, stepping closer to him. And a dragon doesn't wear my blue silk pajamas. You're being ridiculous, he scoffed, trying to brush past me. You're tired. You're overworked. You come home stressed out of your mind and you're looking for a fight. I'm not doing this. You are not walking away, I grabbed his arm. It was the first time in 10 years of marriage I had ever touched him in anger. Who is she? He ripped his arm away, sneering at me. You're acting crazy. This is exactly why I can't talk to you anymore. You're paranoid. You know what? Maybe if you were actually home once in a while instead of at that damn hospital, our daughter wouldn't be making up stories for attention. The audacity. The sheer, unadulterated gall of this man. I am at that hospital paying for the steak you eat and the car you drive, I hissed, my voice trembling with the effort to keep it down. Don't you dare turn this on me. Lily said Mommy V. She said new mommy. Explain that. David laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. She probably heard it on TV. Or maybe you're hearing things. Have you checked your meds lately? Maybe the stress is finally cracking you up. Gaslighting. Textbook. He was trying to make me question my own reality. He was trying to use my exhaustion, my hard work, against me. I'm going to check the drawer, I said, turning toward the stairs. If those blue pajamas are moved, David, I swear to God. Don't you dare, he yelled, panic flashing in his eyes for a split second before he covered it with anger. If you go up there and violate my privacy, if you start tearing this house apart because of a toddler's fairy tale, I'm leaving. I can't be around this negative energy. Your privacy? I spun around. It's my drawer. It's my room. I'm done, he grabbed his car keys from the counter. I'm going for a drive. I'm going to let you cool down and realize how insane you sound right now. Don't call me until you're ready to apologize. Apologize? I stood there, stunned. If you walk out that door, David. What? He challenged, opening the front door. You'll what? Divorce me? Good luck paying for this place and childcare on your own. You need me. The door slammed shut. The house shook. I stood in the hallway, shaking. Tears stung my eyes, hot and angry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw a vase at the door. But I couldn't. Lily was in the kitchen. I took 3 deep breaths. In. Out. In. Out. I wiped my face and walked back into the kitchen. Lily was looking down at her plate, looking small and scared. Is Daddy mad at me? She whispered. My heart broke into a million pieces. I knelt beside her chair and hugged her tight. I smelled that floral perfume on her hair again, and it made me want to vomit, but I held her closer. No, baby, I soothed her. Daddy isn't mad at you. Daddy is just confused. You did a very brave thing telling me about Vanessa. You are a good girl. Vanessa said it was a secret, Lily admitted, burying her face in my shoulder. She said if I told you, the magic would go away. What magic? I asked gently. The magic house, Lily mumbled. The new house with the pool. My blood ran cold. New house? I put Lily to bed early that night. I read her 3 stories, until her breathing evened out. Once she was asleep, I went into my bedroom. I walked to the dresser. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the handle. I pulled open the bottom drawer. There, in the back, was the tissue paper. It looked disturbed. Wrinkled. I unwrapped it. The blue silk pajamas were there. But they weren't folded the way I fold them, sharp creases, perfect squares. They were wadded up, shoved back in hastily. I lifted the top to my nose. It didn't smell like lavender sachets. It smelled like cheap vanilla body spray and stale cigarette smoke. David didn't smoke. I didn't smoke. I dropped the silk like it was burning my skin. I sank onto the floor, the fabric pooling around my knees. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't a hallucination. A stranger had been in my bed. Wearing my skin, essentially. Playing house with my husband and child. I didn't cry. The tears stopped. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. It was the nurse in me taking over. When a patient is crashing, you don't panic. You assess. You plan. You act. David thought I was weak. He thought I was just the tired nurse he could manipulate. He thought I would apologize when he came home. He was wrong. I stood up and walked to the closet. I pulled out my laptop. I wasn't going to just confront him again. He would just deny it. I needed proof. Irrefutable, high-definition proof. I needed to see Vanessa for myself. The next morning, David came home around 10 a.m. He had slept in his car, or more likely, at her place. He walked in with coffee and donuts, acting like nothing had happened. He was testing the waters, waiting to see if I had calmed down. "Peace offering," he said, holding up the box of donuts with a charming, boyish grin. I forced a smile. It was the hardest acting performance of my life. "Thanks," I said. "Look, David, I'm sorry about last night. I was exhausted. Dr. Evans really worked me to the bone. I shouldn't have snapped at you." Relief washed over his face. He kissed my forehead. "It's okay, babe. I know you're stressed. I forgive you. I forgive you." The audacity almost made me laugh. "Actually," I said, sipping my coffee to hide the disgust on my lips. "They called me from the hospital. Someone called out sick for the night shift again. They offered double overtime. I think I'm going to take it. We could use the extra cash for that vacation, right?" David's eyes lit up. Not because we needed the money, but because he saw an opportunity. "Oh? Tonight? Are you sure you're up for it?" "Yeah," I lied smoothly. "I'll leave around 6 p.m. I'll sleep at the on-call room tomorrow morning so I don't drive tired." "That sounds smart," he nodded, already mentally planning his evening. "Don't worry about Lily. I've got things covered here." "You're the best," I said. As soon as David went outside to wash his car, prepping it for his date, no doubt, I went to work. I had ordered them overnight delivery, 3 tiny spy cameras disguised as USB wall chargers. They looked exactly like the generic white blocks everyone has plugged in everywhere. I plugged one in the kitchen, facing the island and the table. I plugged one in the living room, facing the main sofa. And the last one, I plugged it in our bedroom, facing the bed. My hands felt dirty doing it. I felt like I was violating my own home. But he had violated it first. At 5:30 p.m., I kissed Lily goodbye. "Be good for Daddy," I whispered, holding her a little too tight. "I love you more than anything." I got in my car and drove away. But I didn't go to the hospital. I drove 2 exits down the highway to a Motel 6. I checked into a room that smelled of lemon cleaner and desperation. I sat on the lumpy bed, opened my laptop, and connected to the camera feeds. The wait was agonizing. For 3 hours, it was just David and Lily. He made her frozen nuggets, so much for his cooking, let her watch iPad, and put her to bed at 8 p.m. sharp. Then, the show began. 8:15 p.m., the doorbell rang. David practically ran to the door. He opened it, and there she was. Vanessa. She was young. Painfully young. Maybe 23 or 24. She had long, bleached blonde hair and wore a tight crop top and jeans. She didn't look like a monster. She looked like a college student. David pulled her into a kiss right there in the hallway. I watched on my screen, feeling a phantom pain in my chest. He grabbed her waist with a passion he hadn't shown me in 5 years. "Is the dragon asleep?" Vanessa giggled. Her voice was tinny through the microphone, but clear. "Out like a light," David grinned. "And the Wicked Witch of the ward is gone until tomorrow noon." Wicked Witch. That's what they called me. They moved to the kitchen. Vanessa hopped up onto the counter, my granite counter that I cleaned every day. "Did you miss me?" she cooed. "Every second," David said. "God, It's suffocating when she's here. All she talks about is patients and bills. It's so boring. Don't worry, baby, Vanessa stroked his face. Soon we'll be in the condo. Just us. And Lily. Did you bring your stuff? David asked. Oops, Vanessa bit her lip. I forgot my bag in my car. Can I borrow, David laughed. Go ahead. You know where they are. Top drawer for you, bottom drawer for the trash. I watched, paralyzed, as Vanessa skipped up the stairs. Switch to camera 3, bedroom. She walked into my room. She didn't just open the drawer. She rummaged through it. She pulled out the blue silk pajamas. She held them up against her body, posing in the mirror. God, this style is so old, she muttered to herself. She dresses like my grandma. She stripped off her clothes. Right there. In my room. I looked away, feeling sick. When I looked back, she was wearing my silk. She sprayed my Chanel No. 5 on her neck, then waved her hand in front of her nose. Ugh. Stinks. Then, the doorbell rang again. I frowned. Who else was coming? David opened the door downstairs. Mom. David said. You're early. My breath caught in my throat. Linda. My mother-in-law. Linda walked in, carrying a casserole dish. Linda, who I had spent Thanksgiving with. Linda, whose medical bills I had helped sort out. Linda, who always told me I was like a daughter. She walked into the kitchen. Vanessa came down the stairs in my pajamas. I expected Linda to be shocked. I expected her to slap her son. Instead, Linda smiled. A warm, genuine smile. Oh, Vanessa, honey. Linda chirped. Look at you. That color looks so much better on you than it does on Sarah. Sarah is a bit too wide for silk, don't you think? Hi, Linda. Vanessa hugged her. Did you make the lasagna? I sure did, Linda said, setting the dish down. I know you don't like to cook, sweetie. I wanted to make sure my son had a good meal. Sarah never cooks anything decent. Just that store-bought pasta garbage. I sat in that motel room, staring at the screen, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy. My husband, his mistress, and his mother were having a family dinner in my house, eating lasagna, and mocking me while wearing my clothes. They were a family. And I was the bankroll they were laughing at. So, Linda asked, pouring herself a glass of my wine. How is the timeline looking? When is the closing? Friday, David said, his mouth full of lasagna. The bank just needs one more signature. Sarah thinks she's signing a refinance for a lower rate. She doesn't even read the papers half the time. Good, Linda nodded. You need to get that money secure before you file for divorce. You deserve that condo, David. You've suffered enough with that workaholic. I know, Mom, David sighed. Just a few more days. Then I take the $150,000, we buy the place in Vanessa's name, and I serve Sarah the papers. She gets the debt, I get the cash. My tears stopped instantly. The bank. The signature. $150,000. This wasn't just heartbreak anymore. This was a crime. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the motel chair, replaying that clip over and over again. She gets the debt, I get the cash. I had thought David was just a cheater. A weak, selfish man seeking validation from a younger woman. But this? This was predatory. This was calculated destruction. He wasn't just planning to leave me, he was planning to bury me. At 3 a.m., I logged into our bank accounts. Everything looked normal in the joint checking. Just the usual bills. But David had mentioned a signature and a refinance. I went to the credit monitoring site, Credit Karma. I had the passwords because I managed everything. I clicked on Open Applications. There it was. A pending application for a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. Amount, $150,000. Status, approved pending final notarization. I clicked on the details. The application had been submitted 3 weeks ago. There were digital signatures on the initial documents. My digital signature. I scrolled through the PDF. I saw my name signed at the bottom of pages I had never seen. He had used my DocuSign account. He knew the password because I used it for tax returns. The plan was simple and evil. He would take out the equity from the house, $150,000 of hard-earned value that I had paid for. He would transfer that cash to buy a condo. He would put the condo in Vanessa's name so it wouldn't be a marital asset. Then, he would divorce me. Since the debt was against our house, and in both our names, I would be liable for it. But since the cash would be gone, likely laundered or gifted to Vanessa, I would be stuck paying off a $150,000 loan on a house I might lose in the divorce, while he lived mortgage-free in a luxury condo with his mistress. And his mother knew. She was cheering him on. I felt a cold rage settle over me. It was sharper than the grief. Grief makes you weak, rage makes you focused. I looked at the calendar on my laptop. Today was Saturday. David said in the video the closing was Friday. That meant I had 6 days. 6 days to stop him. 6 days to destroy him. I closed the laptop. I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone who knew the law, someone who could tell me exactly how to spring this trap so it snapped his neck, not mine. I thought of Mark. Mark was my best friend from college. We had dated briefly in our sophomore year, realized we were better as friends, and stayed close. He was a shark of a divorce attorney in the city. David hated him. David always called him that arrogant lawyer. I grabbed my phone. It was 4:15 a.m. I texted him. I need you. Emergency. It's David. It's bad. He replied in 2 minutes. I'm up. Coffee shop on 5th and Main. 7 a.m. Bring everything. I showered in the motel, scrubbing my skin until it was red, trying to wash off the feeling of seeing Vanessa in my clothes. I put on my scrubs. I had to pretend I was coming from work. I drove to the house at 6:30 a.m. I had to time it perfectly. I walked in. The house was quiet. The smell of lasagna lingered in the air, masking the usual scent of my cleaning products. I went to the kitchen. The casserole dish was washed and drying on the rack. The counters were wiped. They were covering their tracks. I went upstairs. David was in bed, asleep. He was sleeping on his side of the bed, looking peaceful. Like an angel. A demon in disguise. I opened the drawer. The pajamas were folded perfectly again. I grabbed a fresh set of clothes and left, texting David, shift ran late, grabbing breakfast with a coworker, be home by noon. I drove to the coffee shop. Mark was already there, sitting in a booth, a large black coffee in front of him. He looked at me, at my red-rimmed eyes and shaking hands, and he didn't say a word. He just pushed a coffee toward me. Talk, he said. I opened my laptop. Don't talk. Watch. I played him the video of the dinner. Then the video of the bedroom. Then the conversation about the money. Mark, usually the most stoic man I knew, watched with a hardening jaw. When the part about the $150,000 came up, he pulled out a notepad and started writing furiously. When the video ended, he closed my laptop gently. Okay, Mark said. His voice was low, dangerous. We are not just going to divorce him, Sarah. We are going to obliterate him. He wants to steal the equity, I whispered. He's committing fraud, Mark corrected me. Bank fraud. Identity theft. And conspiracy, since his girlfriend and mother are involved. If he signs those final papers on Friday, he crosses the line from scumbag to felon. So we stop the loan? I asked. No, Mark smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. We let him walk right up to the edge of the cliff. We need him to confirm his intent. We need to catch him in the act of trying to sign. But if he signs, we'll be there, Mark said. Do you know where the closing is? He said the bank. The usual branch downtown, I assume. He uses the notary there. Find out for sure, Mark commanded. And until Friday, you have to be the best actress in the world. You have to go home, kiss him, cook for him, and act like you are the stupid, oblivious wife he thinks you are. Can you do that? I thought of Vanessa wearing my silk. I thought of Linda eating my food. I thought of David selling our future. I can do it, I said. Good, Mark said. Because on Friday, we're going to throw him a surprise party he'll never forget. The strategy meeting with Mark lasted 2 hours. We mapped out every detail. The key is the notarization, Mark explained, tapping his pen on the table. For a helic on a jointly owned property, both spouses must be present to sign, or one must have a valid power of attorney. He doesn't have a power of attorney for you, does he? No, I shook my head. Never. Then he's likely going to try to forge your signature again, or... Mark paused, his eyes narrowing. Or he's going to bring someone to impersonate you. My jaw dropped. He wouldn't dare. He's desperate, Sarah. Real estate is tanking, he has no income, and he promised a gold digger a condo. Desperate men do stupid things. Vanessa is roughly your height, right? With a wig, a mask, maybe they claim you're sick. The thought made my stomach churn. So what do? We let him think he's won, Mark said. You continue to be busy with work. Give him the space to execute the crime. Meanwhile, I'm going to draft a full divorce petition, a restraining order, and I'm going to contact a friend of mine in the fraud division at the bank. We'll be waiting. I left the coffee shop feeling different. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the hunter. Driving back to the house was surreal. I pulled into the driveway, knowing that inside that house, my husband was probably texting his mistress about how easy I was to fool. I walked in. David was on the couch, watching football with Lily. Hey, babe, he called out, not looking away from the TV. How was the double shift? You must be dead. Exhausted, I said, channeling every ounce of my inner Meryl Streep. I walked over and kissed the top of his head. I wanted to gag, but I made it linger. But the overtime pay will be worth it. I was thinking, maybe we can finally upgrade the kitchen cabinets next year? David stiffened slightly. Yeah. Maybe. Or we could invest it. You know, make the money work for us. Whatever you think is best, honey, I smiled vacantly. You're the finance guy. He smirked. That arrogant, condescending smirk. That's why you love me. I take care of the big picture. For the next 4 days, I lived in a nightmare. I had to sleep in the same bed with him. I had to feel his body heat next to me, knowing where he had been. Every time his phone buzzed, he angled it away. Every time he went to the grocery store for 2 hours and came back with only a gallon of milk, I knew exactly what he was doing. But I had the cameras. I watched them when I was in the bathroom. I watched them when I was on my lunch break at work. I saw them planning the condo furniture. I heard Vanessa say, I can't wait to throw away all her ugly curtains. I heard Linda say, make sure you get the check immediately, David. Don't let it sit in the joint account for even a second. I was gathering ammunition. Mark was compiling the transcripts. On Wednesday, a text popped up on my phone from an unknown number. He doesn't love you. He's just staying for the kid. You should just leave and save yourself the embarrassment. My hand shook. It was Vanessa. She was taunting me. She wanted me to blow up. She wanted me to confront David so he would have an excuse to leave now. Maybe she was getting impatient. I didn't reply. I screenshotted it and sent it to Mark. Mark replied, "Add it to the pile." Harassment. Keeps getting better. The hardest part was Lily. She was confused. She sensed the tension even though we were pretending. And she was being fed lies. On Thursday night, I was tucking her in. "Mommy," she asked. "When we move to the house with the pool, will you have a room too?" I brushed the hair off her forehead. "Who told you about a house with a pool, baby?" "Daddy and Vanessa," she said. "They showed me pictures. It has a slide. Daddy said I can live there, and you can come visit on Sundays." I had to walk out of the room before I broke down. He was planning to take my daughter. He wasn't just stealing my money, he was stealing my child. He was setting up a narrative where I was the visitor. I went to the bathroom and turned on the shower so David wouldn't hear me scream into a towel. That moment, that specific moment of realizing he wanted to relegate me to a weekend visitor in my own daughter's life, was the moment any lingering hesitation vanished. I didn't just want him in jail. I wanted him destroyed. I walked out of the bathroom, eyes dry, resolve steel hard. "David," I called out. He was in the bedroom, packing a small bag. "Yeah," he jumped a little. "Just packing gym clothes." "I just got off the phone with Dr. Evans," I lied. "There's a massive conference this weekend in Boston. They want me to go represent the department. I'd leave tomorrow morning, come back Sunday. They're paying a huge bonus." David's face lit up like a Christmas tree. This was perfect for him. If I was in Boston, he could go to the closing on Friday afternoon without worrying about me wondering where he was. "Babe, that's amazing," he said, feigning pride. "You should definitely go. It's great for your career. You don't mind watching Lily all weekend?" "Not at all. We'll have a daddy-daughter weekend. It'll be fun." "Okay," I said. "I'll go." The trap was set. He thought the coast was clear. He thought I was leaving the state. Little did he know, I wasn't going to Boston. I was going to his surprise party. Friday morning arrived with a gray, ominous sky. It fit my mood perfectly. I packed a suitcase, making a show of it. I threw in my business suits, my heels. I kissed David goodbye at the door at 7 a.m. "Have fun in Boston," he called out, barely hiding his excitement. He was practically bouncing on the balls of his feet. "I will," I said. "Don't do anything I wouldn't do." "Haha. Funny," he waved. I drove down the street, turned the corner, and pulled into the parking lot of the Target 3 blocks away. I waited. 10 minutes later, Vanessa's red convertible pulled into my driveway. I watched on the camera feed on my phone. She walked in without knocking. She was wearing a white dress, almost like a bridal dress, but shorter and trashier. "Is the witch gone?" she squealed. "Gone to Boston." David grabbed her and spun her around. "We are free, baby. Noon today. We sign the papers, get the check, and start the new life." "Did you get the notary to agree?" Vanessa asked, pouring herself a mimosa, my orange juice, my champagne. "Yeah, my buddy Greg is working the desk. He owes me a favor. He won't ask too many questions about why Sarah is wearing a wig and sunglasses." David laughed. My blood ran cold. Impersonation. They were actually going to do it. Vanessa was going to dress up as me to sign the documents. Mark was right. I called Mark. "They're doing it at noon. And she's impersonating me." "Holy sh*T, Mark said, sounding impressed by their stupidity. "Okay. Change of plans. We don't intercept them at the bank." "We don't?" "No. If we stop them at the bank, it's just attempted fraud. And the bank security will just kick them out. We want a spectacle. We want maximum damage. Where are they going after the bank? I listened to the feed. I booked the lunch at Le Jardin for 1 p.m., David was saying. Mom is meeting us there. We're going to celebrate in style. Le Jardin. The most expensive French restaurant in town. The place we went for our 5th anniversary. The place he said we couldn't afford anymore. They're going to Le Jardin at 1 p.m., I told Mark. With his mother. Perfect, Mark said. Sarah, go buy a dress. A red one. Something that says I own this town. Meet me at my office at 12:30. We're crashing lunch. I spent the next 3 hours in a fugue state. I went to the mall. I didn't look at price tags. I bought a crimson red dress that fit like a second skin. It was bold, aggressive, and beautiful. I bought stilettos. I went to the salon and got a blowout. I looked in the mirror. The tired nurse was gone. The woman staring back was a warrior. At 12:30, I met Mark. He had a folder thick with documents. And he had 2 other men with him. This is Detective Miller and Detective Sanchez, Mark introduced them. Economic Crimes Unit. They've seen the videos. They're very interested in the identity theft aspect. Ma'am, Detective Miller nodded. We'll be in the unmarked car. We'll wait for your signal. My signal? Mark said you want to give a toast, Miller smirked. I do, I said. We drove to the restaurant. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. This was it. The point of no return. We walked into Le Jardin. The hostess looked at me, stunned by the red dress. Table for Louis? I asked. Oh, Mr. Lewis is already seated, with his party. Are you joining them? I'm his wife, I smiled. It's a surprise. I walked into the main dining room. It was crowded. And there they were. The unholy trinity. David, looking smug in a suit. Vanessa, still in her white dress, laughing loudly, a diamond necklace glittering on her neck. Linda, my mother-in-law, clinking her glass with theirs. They looked so happy. They looked victorious. A bottle of Dom Perignon was on the table. I took a deep breath. I walked up behind David. Celebrating something special? I asked, my voice loud and clear. David froze. The glass halted halfway to his mouth. Vanessa's eyes went wide. Linda choked on her wine. David turned around slowly. When he saw me, not in scrubs, not in Boston, but here, in a red dress, looking like retribution incarnate, his face crumbled. Sarah, he squeaked. You're in Boston. And you, I said, looking at Vanessa, are wearing my necklace. And my husband. But the necklace bothers me more. The entire restaurant went silent. Every eye was on us. Sarah, don't make a scene, Linda hissed, trying to regain control. Sit down. We can explain. Oh, I don't want to sit, Linda, I smiled, and it was the sharpest smile I had ever worn. And I don't need an explanation. I have a presentation. I pulled my phone out and held it up. I had connected it to the restaurant's Bluetooth speaker system on the way in, a little trick I learned from the hostess who sympathized with me when I slipped her a $50 bill and told her the truth at the door. What are you doing? David stood up, panic rising. Just sharing the joy, David, I said. Everyone, look at the TVs. I hit play. The restaurant, Le Jardin, was known for its hushed atmosphere. It was the kind of place where deals were made in whispers and engagement rings were hidden in soufflés. But in that moment, as I stood in my crimson dress, phone held high like a detonator, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of a held breath before a scream. David, stop her. Linda shrieked, her hand knocking over a glass of water. She's hysterical. David lunged for me, his face twisted in a mixture of rage and terror. "Give me the phone, Sarah. You're making a fool of yourself." He was fast, but I was prepared. I stepped back, and two waiters, burly men who I had tipped generously 5 minutes prior, stepped in his path. They didn't touch him, they just blocked him. "Please remain seated, sir," one of them said, his voice polite but firm. "This is my wife." David spat. "She's having a mental breakdown." "Oh, I've never been more sane, David," I said, my voice projecting clearly across the room. I tapped the screen. And now, for the feature presentation. The large flat-screen TVs mounted above the bar and in the private corners flickered. Usually, they showed scenic views of vineyards or abstract art. Now, they shifted to the grainy, wide-angle view of my living room. A collective gasp rippled through the dining room. Forks lowered. Conversations died. On the screen, it was unmistakable. It was my house. Video timestamp, Tuesday 8:43 p.m. The audio boomed through the restaurant speakers. It was tinny but decipherable. "God, I hate this couch," Vanessa's voice whined on the screen. The Vanessa on the screen was wearing my blue silk pajamas. The real Vanessa, sitting 10 feet away from me in her white dress, turned a shade of gray I didn't know human skin could achieve. On screen, David walked into the frame, handing her a glass of wine. "Don't worry, babe. Once the loan clears on Friday, we burn this furniture. We buy the Italian leather for the condo." "And the wife?" On-screen Vanessa giggled, stretching out on the sofa, my sofa. "What if she notices the money is gone?" "Sarah?" On-screen David laughed, a sound that echoed hauntingly in the silent restaurant. "Sarah is a mule. She works, she sleeps, she pays the bills. She's too stupid to check the credit reports. By the time she realizes I've cashed out the equity, we'll be moved in, and she'll be drowning in debt. I'll claim it was a bad investment. She'll believe anything I say." In the restaurant, the real David looked like he had been shot. He sank back into his chair, his hands covering his face. I looked around the room. The diners, wealthy, respectable people of the town, were staring at David with unmasked disgust. A woman at the next table whispered loudly, "Did he say she's a mule?" But I wasn't done. "Skip to chapter 2, I said to the room. The video shifted. Camera 3. The bedroom. This was the kill shot. The video showed Vanessa rummaging through my jewelry box. She pulled out a pearl necklace, the one my grandmother gave me on her deathbed. "This is real," on-screen Vanessa said. "Can I pawn it? For the pool party?" On-screen David hugged her from behind. "Take it. She never wears it. She doesn't have the neck for pearls anyway. You, though, you look like a queen." The real Vanessa instinctively reached up to her neck. She was wearing those pearls. Right now. In the restaurant. I pointed at her. "That's a lovely necklace, Vanessa. My grandmother wore it to her wedding in 1945. Does it feel heavy?" "It should. It carries the weight of a woman who actually had class." Vanessa tried to unclasp it, her fingers fumbling frantically, scratching at her own neck. Tears of humiliation were streaming down her face, ruining her heavy makeup. "And finally," I said, my voice turning icy. "The co-conspirator." The video cut to the kitchen. My mother-in-law, Linda. "Make sure you get the signature on Friday," on-screen Linda said, eating my lasagna. "Sarah is going to be destitute, but that's not your problem. You need to secure your future. She was never good enough for you, David. Too ambitious. Too independent. A wife should serve, not work." The real Linda let out a sob. She looked around the room, pleading with her eyes to anyone who would look at her. "It's edited. It's a deep fake. That's not me." I stopped the video. The screens went black. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, and absolutely delicious. I walked up to the table. I picked up David's glass of Dom Perignon. I swirled it, looking at the bubbles. "You called me a mule, David," I said softly. "You said I was too stupid to check the papers. You said I would believe anything." I poured the champagne slowly onto the floor, splashing his polished Italian leather shoes. "I may be a mule," I whispered, leaning in so only he could hear. "But mules kick really, really hard." David looked up at me. His eyes were red, wet, and filled with a hatred so pure it almost burned. "You ruined everything," he hissed. "Are you happy? You humiliated me. You destroyed my reputation. I'll sue you for defamation. I'll take everything." "Defamation requires the statement to be false, David," I smiled. "And you can't sue me." "Why?" he sneered, standing up, trying to regain a shred of dominance. "Because you think you won? I still have the house. I still have the contacts. You're just a bitter nurse." "I can't be sued by you," I said, looking over his shoulder toward the entrance. "Because felons have a hard time finding representation in civil court when they're being prosecuted by the state." David frowned. "What?" I pointed to the door. "Timing is everything, darling." The heavy oak doors of Le Jardin swung open. Mark walked in first. My college friend, my lawyer, my savior. He looked impeccable in his navy suit, carrying a thick manila folder. He wasn't smiling. He looked like an executioner. Behind him were Detective Miller and Detective Sanchez. They weren't wearing uniforms, they were in suits, badges clipped to their belts, guns visible in their holsters. The atmosphere in the restaurant shifted from scandal to fear. This wasn't just a domestic dispute anymore. This was the law. David saw them. He saw Mark. And for the first time, the reality of the situation actually penetrated his narcissism. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked small. "Mr. David Lewis?" Detective Miller announced, his voice booming. He didn't ask, he stated. David stood up, his chair knocking over backward. Yes. What is this?" "I am Detective Miller with the Economic Crimes Unit. You are under arrest." "Arrest?" David's voice cracked. It was a high, pathetic sound. "For what? Eating lunch? This is harassment. My wife put you up to this. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of bank fraud, identity theft, forgery in the first degree, and grand larceny," Miller recited, walking steadily toward the table. "Forgery?" Linda gasped. She grabbed David's arm. "David, tell them. You didn't forge anything." "Ma'am, step back," Detective Sanchez warned, stepping between them. "This is a mistake." David shouted, looking around the room, seeking an ally. "I'm a respected realtor. I know the mayor. This is a setup." "We have the IP logs from the loan application, Mr. Lewis," Mark spoke up. His voice was calm, cutting through David's hysteria. "We have the video of you discussing the fraudulent signature. And we have the testimony of the notary you tried to bribe this morning. Greg rolled on you, David. He didn't want to go to jail for you." David froze. The color drained from his face completely. Greg. His safety net. Gone. Detective Miller spun David around. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut, click, 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 was the sweetest music I had ever heard. It was better than any symphony. It was the sound of my freedom. David struggled slightly, his face pressed against the white tablecloth. Sarah, tell them to stop. I'll cancel the loan. I promise. We can work this out." "There is no we, David," I said, watching him struggle. "There hasn't been a we for a long time. Just you, and the money you stole from me." Detective Sanchez turned his attention to Vanessa. Vanessa was trying to slide out of the booth, clutching her designer handbag to her chest. She looked like a trapped animal. "Ms. Vanessa Jenkins?" Sanchez asked. "I didn't do anything," she squealed. "I'm just his assistant. I don't know anything about loans." "We have you on video conspiring to conceal assets," Sanchez said. "But right now, you are being detained as a person of interest." "And?" He pointed to her neck. "That necklace is listed as stolen property." "He gave it to me," Vanessa cried. "It was a gift." "It wasn't his to give," I interjected. "It belongs to my family." "Hand it over, miss." Sanchez held out an evidence bag. With trembling fingers, Vanessa unclasped the pearls. Then Sanchez pointed to the handbag. "And the bag. And the bracelet." "This is mine," she shrieked. Actually, Mark checked his notes. According to the credit card statements we subpoenaed this morning, that bag was purchased on Tuesday using Mrs. Sarah Lewis's card without authorization. That makes it stolen property/evidence. Vanessa screamed. It was a guttural, immature scream of a spoiled child being told no. She threw the bag at the detective. "Take it. I don't want his trash anyway." They led them out. David, cuffed and crying, begging me to look at him. Vanessa, sobbing and mascara-streaked, yelling that she was a victim. And then there was Linda. My mother-in-law sat alone at the table, surrounded by 3 empty chairs and a spilled bottle of champagne. She looked ancient. Her social standing, her pride, her son, all stripped away in 10 minutes. She looked up at me. Her eyes were wet. "Sarah," she whispered. "He's your husband. He's the father of your child. How could you?" I stared at her. I waited for a pang of guilt. I waited to feel sorry for this old woman. But then I remembered her voice on the video. Too ambitious. A wife should serve. "You're right, Linda," I said, stepping closer. "He is the father of my child. And that is the only reason I'm not pressing charges against you for conspiracy. Yet." She flinched. "But know this," I continued, my voice low and hard. "You are done. You will never step foot in my house again. You will never see Lily again without a court order and a supervisor. You wanted him to have a new life? You got it. He has a new life in a cell. And you have a new life alone. You can't keep me from my granddaughter," she sobbed. "Watch me," I said. "You helped him try to steal her inheritance. No judge in this state will let you near her." I turned to Mark. "I'm done here. Let's go." As we walked out of Le Jardin, the patrons didn't applaud. This wasn't a movie. They stared in shock, whispering, typing on their phones. I knew by evening, this would be the talk of the entire town. I walked out into the cool afternoon air. My legs felt heavy, but my chest felt light. For the first time in years, I could breathe. Mark put a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" I looked at the police cruiser driving away with my husband in the back. "No," I admitted. "I'm not okay. But I will be." The adrenaline crash that follows a moment like that is brutal. I went back to the house, my house, and locked the door. I collapsed onto the floor of the entryway and cried for an hour. I cried for the marriage I thought I had. I cried for the wasted years. I cried for Lily, who was about to have her world turned upside down. But I didn't stay on the floor. I couldn't. Mark called me at 6 p.m. He's been processed. Bail is set at $500,000 because he's a flight risk and the fraud amount is significant. Linda doesn't have that kind of liquid cash. He's spending the weekend in county. Good, I said, wiping my eyes. What about the house? Since he's in custody, I filed an emergency protective order. He can't come within 500 feet of you or the property even if he makes bail. We need to secure the assets. The next few weeks were a blur of logistics and heartbreak. I had to tell Lily. That was the hardest part. How do you tell a 5-year-old that daddy is in timeout for a very long time because he told lies? I consulted a child psychologist. We kept it simple. Daddy made some big mistakes and has to go away to learn to be better. Lily cried. She asked for him. She asked for the house with the pool. Every question was a dagger in my heart, but I held her. I was the rock. I had to be. Then came the physical purge. I couldn't sleep in my bed. Not after knowing Vanessa had been there. I hired a junk removal crew. I told them to take the mattress, the sheets, the pillows. Take the couch too, I said, pointing to the living room sectional. Ma'am, this looks brand new, the guy said. It's contaminated, I replied. Take it. I went to the closet. David's suits. His shoes. His golf clubs. I didn't burn them, that's a cliché, and frankly, bad for the environment. Instead, I called a charity that helps men re-entering the workforce after prison. He won't be needing these for a while, I told the coordinator. Maybe they can help someone who actually wants to work for a living. I found hidden credit cards in his sock drawer. I found a second phone taped under his nightstand. Every discovery was a vindication of my actions. He had been living a double life for years. The financial audit was terrifying. Mark's forensic accountant went through our books. David hadn't just tried to take the $150,000. He had drained our emergency savings. He had cashed out a small IRA. He had racked up $40,000 in credit card debt on cards I didn't know existed. I was technically bankrupt on paper, despite my high income. We can pin the fraud debt on him in the divorce, Mark assured me. But the cash he spent, that's gone, Sarah. You're going to have to rebuild. I looked at the spreadsheet. Years of overtime, years of missed holidays, gone. Spent on dinners at Le Jardin, hotels, and gifts for a 24-year-old assistant. It made me angry, yes. But it also clarified everything. If I had stayed, if I hadn't caught him, he would have left me with nothing and the debt. Now, I was broke, but I was free. And I still had the house. One evening, about 2 weeks after the arrest, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was Linda. She looked terrible. Her hair wasn't done. She looked 10 years older. I opened the door but left the security chain on. Sarah, she said, her voice cracking. Please. I need to see him. I need money for his lawyer. He's not doing well in there. I don't have money, Linda, I said through the crack. Your son spent it all on Vanessa. He's your husband, she pleaded. You can't just let him rot. He's not my husband, I said. He's the defendant in the People vs. David Lewis. And I'm the primary witness. I'll testify against you, she threatened, her sorrow turning to venom. I'll tell them you were abusive. I'll tell them you drove him to it. I laughed. It was a dark, dry laugh. Go ahead. Perjury is a felony too, Linda. And I have you on video conspiring to defraud a bank. Do you really want to join him in a cell? They don't have Chardonnay in prison. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. She realized, finally, that she had no power here. Go home, Linda, I said. And save your money. The commissary is expensive. I slammed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I leaned against the wood and breathed. I was done being the nice girl. The nice girl got cheated on. The nice girl got robbed. The woman standing in that hallway was someone new. Someone made of steel. 3 weeks post-arrest. David finally made bail. Linda had mortgaged her own condo, her retirement home, to get him out. Mark advised against meeting him, but I needed closure. Not for him, for me. I needed to look him in the eye one last time without the chaos of a restaurant or a courtroom. He requested a meeting to discuss settlement terms before the first hearing. We met in Mark's conference room. When David walked in, he looked diminished. He had lost weight. His tan was gone, replaced by a sallow, gray complexion. He wore a cheap suit, his good ones were donated. He didn't look like the confident real estate mogul anymore. He looked like what he was, a con man who got caught. He sat down across from me. Mark sat next to me. David's lawyer, a court-appointed public defender who looked overworked, sat next to him. "Sarah," David started. He tried to use his soft voice, the one he used to use when he wanted sex or a favor. "You look great. That color suits you." I was wearing a simple black blouse. I didn't smile. "Cut the crap, David. Why are we here?" "I wanted to apologize," he said. He reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I pulled back as if he were radioactive. "I messed up," he continued, looking at his hands. I got confused. Vanessa, she manipulated me. She made me feel like I was missing out on life. She pressured me about the money. It wasn't my idea. I stared at him. Even now, facing 10 to 15 years in prison, he couldn't take responsibility. It was Vanessa's fault. It was the market's fault. "Is that your defense?" I asked. "The 24-year-old made you do it? You, the 36-year-old man?" "I was vulnerable," he insisted. "And you were always working." "I was lonely, Sarah. A man has needs." Mark started to intervene, but I held up a hand. "Let him speak." "I want to come home," David said, his eyes pleading. "I want to fix this. For Lily. She needs her father. If you drop the charges, tell the DA it was a misunderstanding, we can start over. I'll go to therapy. I swear." I looked at this man. I looked at the way his eyes darted around the room, assessing his options. He didn't want me. He wanted his house back. He wanted his lifestyle back. He wanted to avoid prison. "David," I said quietly. "Do you remember our vows?" "Yes," he nodded eagerly. "For better or worse?" "This is the worse, Sarah. This is where you stand by me." "You forgot the part about forsaking all others," I said. "And I think there's a law against forgery that supersedes wedding vows." I made a mistake, he slammed his hand on the table. The old anger was back. "Stop acting like you're perfect. You're cold. You're a workaholic. You drove me to her." "I worked," I said, my voice steady, "to pay for the roof over your head. I worked to pay for the car you drove to pick her up. I worked to buy the food you fed her." I stood up. I walked over to the window and looked out at the city. "You know, David," I said, not turning around. "For years, I thought I wasn't enough. I thought if I lost 10 pounds, or if I cooked better, or if I made more money, you would look at me the way you used to. I thought my value was something I had to earn from you." I turned around to face him. "But then I saw you with her. I saw you willing to bankrupt your own daughter's future for a pool and a ego boost. And I realized something." I leaned over the table, my face inches from his. "You didn't cheat because I wasn't enough. You cheated because you are empty. You are a black hole, David. You suck everything in, money, love, energy, and you give nothing back. And I am done feeding the beast." "You can't do this," he whispered. "I'll be ruined." "You were ruined the moment you signed my name," I said. I slid a thick envelope across the table. "What is this?" he asked. "Divorce papers," Mark answered. "And a voluntary surrender of parental rights." "I'm not signing that," David sneered. "I want custody. I want half the house." "If you sign it," I said, "I will ask the DA to recommend the minimum sentence for the fraud." 5 years instead of 15. David froze. If you fight me, I continued, my voice hard as steel, I will spend every penny I have left ensuring you get the maximum. I will bring Vanessa to the stand. I will bring your mother to the stand. I will air every dirty secret you have. And you will die in prison an old man. The room was silent. The public defender looked at David and nodded slightly. It was the best deal he was going to get. David looked at the papers. He looked at me. He saw no love, no hesitation. Only consequences. He picked up the pen. His hand shook, just like it had at the dinner table. He signed. Goodbye, David, I said. I walked out of the conference room. I didn't look back. I heard him start to cry again, but it sounded like noise from a distant radio station. It wasn't my station anymore. 6 months later. The wheels of justice grind slow, but they grind fine. I stood in the courtroom for the sentencing. I wasn't required to be there, but I needed to see the period put at the end of the sentence. David had pleaded guilty. The evidence was insurmountable. Vanessa had taken a plea deal. She turned state's evidence against David to avoid jail time for the conspiracy. She claimed he coerced her, that she didn't know the money was stolen. It was a lie, but the prosecutor wanted the bigger fish. Vanessa got probation and community service. But her reputation was destroyed. In our town, she was a pariah. She lost her job at the real estate firm. Last I heard, she moved back to Ohio to live with her parents. She didn't get the condo. She didn't get the pool. She got a criminal record and a bus ticket. Then it was David's turn. He stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit. He looked broken. Linda was in the back row, sobbing quietly into a handkerchief. The judge was a stern woman who had zero patience for white-collar crime. Mr. Lewis, she said, adjusting her glasses. You preyed on the person who trusted you most. You attempted to destroy your family for personal gain. This was not a crime of desperation, it was a crime of greed. David looked down at his shoes. I sentence you to 6 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. You are also ordered to pay restitution of $42,000 for the funds misappropriated from the marital accounts. The gavel banged. Bam. 6 years. Lily would be 11 when he got out. As the bailiff led him away, he looked back at the gallery. He looked at Linda. Then he looked at me. He didn't look angry anymore. He just looked lost. He mouthed one word, sorry. I didn't mouth anything back. I just nodded. Acknowledgement, not forgiveness. Forgiveness was something I might find years down the road, for my own peace. But not today. I walked out of the courthouse. The sun was shining. It was a crisp autumn day. The air smelled like falling leaves and wood smoke. Mark was waiting for me on the steps. It's over, he said. It is, I agreed. How do you feel? Light, I said. I feel light. It has been 1 year since the dinner party at Le Jardin. Life is different now. Not perfect, but real. I sold the big colonial house. It had too many ghosts. I used the equity, what was left of it, to buy a smaller, charming cottage near the lake. It has a big garden for Lily, and no guest room for uninvited mother-in-laws. Lily is doing well. She sees a therapist who helps her process everything. She visits David once a month in a supervised facility. It's hard, but she's resilient. She knows her dad loves her, but she also knows he did something wrong. We don't lie to her. We tell her the truth, age-appropriately. I got promoted at the hospital. I'm now the director of nursing. I don't work night shifts anymore. I am home for dinner every single night. I cook. Real food. Not because I have to earn love, but because I enjoy it. And the blue silk pajamas? I threw them in the trash the day David was arrested. But last week, for my 35th birthday, I bought myself a new pair. Red silk. Bright, fiery red. Just like the dress. I wear them for me. I sleep in the middle of the bed, sprawling out like a starfish. Sometimes, when the house is quiet, I think about that night. I think about how close I came to losing everything. If Lily hadn't spoken up. If I hadn't listened to my gut. If I hadn't fought back. I would be the victim. I would be the poor Sarah everyone pitied. But I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor. I learned that betrayal isn't the end of your story. It's a plot twist. It's the moment the character has to decide who they really are. Are you the doormat, or are you the hurricane? I chose to be the hurricane. So, to everyone watching this, if you have a gut feeling, listen to it. If your child says something strange, listen to them. And if someone treats you like you are nothing, remind them, loudly, publicly, and legally, that you are everything. Don't be afraid to burn the house down if it's infested with rot. You can always build a new one. I did. And let me tell you, the pancakes in my new house? They taste so much better. Because they're made with peace. Thank you for listening to my story. Stay strong. Stay sharp. And never, ever let anyone wear your pajamas.